My name is Evelyn, and I'm a photographer. Not the kind that shoots weddings or smiling families in a park. I chase ghosts. Not literal ones, of course. I don't believe in that stuff. Never have. The ghosts I chase are the ones left behind in peeling paint, in the skeletal remains of a forgotten factory, or in the hollow silence of an abandoned asylum. My camera is my anchor, the one thing I can trust to show me what's real. It doesn't lie. It doesn't imagine things. It captures light and shadow, and that's it. There's a comfort in that, a solidity that I've clung to for as long as I can remember. My life is built on routines, on the predictable rhythm of my days. Every morning, I walk to the Sweet Tooth, a little cake shop on the corner of Elm and Main. I get a plain bagel with cream cheese and a black coffee. Every evening on my way home, I stop by again for a slice of whatever catches my eye. It's my little reward, a small pocket of sweetness in a world that often feels gray and uncertain. That walk, the one I've taken thousands of times, is as familiar to me as my own reflection. I know every crack in the pavement, every crooked lamppost that flickers. It's my territory, my safe space. Or at least it used to be. My parents would tell you I was an imaginative child. Too imaginative. I saw things they couldn't, things that weren't there. A man made of shadows who lived in the corner of my room, a door in the hallway that only I could see. They called them night terrors, figments of an overactive imagination. They took me to doctors who gave my feelings complicated names and prescribed little white pills that made the world feel fuzzy and distant. The other kids at school weren't so clinical. They just called me a freak. The whispers followed me down the hallways, the pointing fingers, the laughter that felt like a physical blow. I learned to keep my mouth shut, to bury the things I saw deep inside where no one could find them. The camera was my salvation. It became my way of proving to myself, and to everyone else, that I knew the difference between what was real and what wasn't. If I could capture it on film, it was real. If I couldn't, it was just a ghost in my head. It's a strange way to live, I know, constantly seeking validation from a machine, but it's the only way I've found to keep the shadows at bay. My work, exploring the forgotten corners of the world, is an extension of that. It's a way to confront the unsettling, the eerie, the places that feel like they're on the edge of reality, and to tame them with the click of a shutter. I'm in control. I decide what's real. But lately, something has felt off. It's a feeling I can't quite shake, a subtle wrongness that prickles at the edges of my perception. It started on my walks home. A flicker in my peripheral vision, a shadow that seems to stretch a little too long, a corner that feels just a bit too sharp. I'd whip my camera up, snap a picture, and find nothing out of the ordinary. Just the same old street, the same old houses. I'd tell myself it was fatigue, my mind playing tricks on me after a long day of editing photos. But the feeling persisted, a low hum of anxiety that I couldn't rationalize away. I started to dread my evening walks, the way the setting sun cast long, distorted shadows that seemed to twist and writhe. It felt like something was watching me, something fast and unseen, something that didn't care about the rules of my carefully constructed reality. It was a feeling that reminded me of my childhood, of the shadow man in the corner of my room, a feeling I'd spent my entire life running from, and I had a sinking feeling, a cold knot of dread in the pit of my stomach, that this time my camera wouldn't be enough to save me. This time the monster was real. It was a Tuesday. I remember that clearly. The sky was a bruised purple, and the air was thick with the promise of rain. I'd just left the Sweet Tooth, a small box with a slice of red velvet cake nestled inside clutched in my hand. The familiar weight of my camera bag was a comforting presence against my hip. As I stepped onto the street, something caught my eye. Across the way, the hanging sign for the coffee shop, The Daily Grind, was completely upside down. The lettering was perfect, just inverted, a flawless mirror image of itself. I stopped and chuckled. It was the kind of perfect mundane error I love to capture, a little slice of absurd reality. I lifted my camera, framed the shot, and pressed the shutter. The flash fired, painting the entire street in a brilliant, searing white for a split second. And then, the ground beneath me lurched. It wasn't an earthquake, not the rolling tremor I'd felt once before. This was a single, violent shake, a brutal shrug from the earth that threw me off balance. I stumbled, catching myself on a lamppost. When I looked up, blinking the ghost of the flash from my eyes, the world seemed to settle back into place. The sign was still upside down. Nothing else looked out of the ordinary. Except the street looked longer. My apartment building, which was usually just a short 2-minute walk away, seemed just a little bit more distant. The perspective felt wrong, stretched. A cold knot formed in my stomach, the same dread from my childhood, whispering that the shadows were back. I tried to rationalize it. An optical illusion, a trick of the fading light, and the afterimage of the flash. I was just tired. I took a deep breath and started walking. My boots clicking on the pavement, the sound unnaturally loud in the sudden, profound silence. The usual evening symphony of distant traffic, of neighborhood dogs and muffled televisions had vanished. The world had gone mute. I kept my eyes fixed on my apartment building's entrance, that familiar red door, my beacon. But it wasn't getting any closer. I walked for what felt like 5 minutes, my pace steady and determined, but the door remained stubbornly distant. In fact, it seemed to be getting further away. I stopped, my heart hammering against my ribs. New buildings, squat and featureless with dark vacant windows, now stood where familiar houses should have been. Unfamiliar alleyways, like jagged black scars, branched off the main street, each one a gaping mouth leading to utter darkness. I spun around, intending to retreat to the warmth and sanity of the cake shop, but it was gone. Or rather, it was now an impossibly tiny speck of light at the far end of a street that stretched for what looked like miles. I was trapped on an endless asphalt treadmill, a hamster in a wheel built by a madman. Panic began to set in, hot and sharp. I fumbled for my camera, my trusted anchor to reality. I snapped a picture of the street ahead, then the street behind. The screen glowed, but the images were a nightmare of glitched pixels and fractured lines. The photos showed a world that was broken, a reality tearing itself apart at the seams. My denial shattered like a pane of glass. This wasn't in my head. This was happening. A low humming sound began to permeate the silence, a subsonic vibration that I felt more in my teeth and bones than heard with my ears. It was the sound of immense, ancient machinery, the sound of reality being re-engineered. The familiar red brick of the buildings around me began to shift and flow, the mortar between them swirling like oil on water. The cracks in the pavement, the ones I knew so well, began to writhe and connect, forming intricate, impossible patterns that hurt to look at. A new sound joined the humming, a rhythmic dripping. Drip, drip, drip. It was close, seemingly right behind my left shoulder, a wet, insistent sound that made the hairs of my arms stand on end. I spun around, but there was nothing there. Just the empty, stretching street. I was being toyed with, I realized. This wasn't random chaos. It was deliberate, intelligent. It was a performance. The architect, the name surfacing in my mind like a dredged-up corpse, was putting on a show just for me. My terror gave way to a surge of desperate defiance. I couldn't keep walking this impossible street. I had to break the pattern. I saw one of the new, dark alleyways to my right. It was a stupid, reckless idea, the kind of thing the final girl in a horror movie does right before she dies, but the street was a slow death, an erosion of my sanity. The alley, at least, was a choice, a point of no return. I took a breath and plunged into the darkness. The alley was suffocatingly narrow, the brick walls so close I could touch both at the same time. They were slick with a cold, viscous fluid that smelled faintly of ozone and decay. The dripping was louder in here, echoing off the walls, surrounding me. Drip. Drip. It sounded like it was coming right from above my head, from the slit of bruised purple sky visible between the rooftops. At the far end of the alley, maybe 20 meters away, was a single metal door. It was dented and rusted, but it was a feature in a world that was quickly becoming featureless. As I get closer, my heart leapt into my throat. It was the back door to my apartment building. I recognized the specific pattern of dents near the handle, the crooked number 3 painted on it. A wave of disorienting relief washed over me. Maybe this was a shortcut, a way out of the madness. I scrambled the last few meters, my hands shaking as I dug in my pocket for my keys. The brass key to the back entrance felt blessedly real, its sharp edges a comfort in my palm. It slid into the lock. It turned. The door swung inward with a low groan, and I stumbled through, desperate for the familiar, slightly musty smell of the lobby. But I wasn't in the lobby. I was in my apartment. I was standing at the end of the hallway facing my own front door from the inside. The air was thick, heavy with the smell of dust and old paper, a scent of profound neglect. The quiet was absolute. My refrigerator, a constant gentle hum in the background of my life, was silent. And the dripping sound, it was here, with me, inside. It was coming from the closed door to my bathroom. The architect had me. It had followed me home, or rather, it had turned my home into another piece of its impossible architecture. The very geometry of the space I knew best now felt alien. The angles of the walls subtly wrong, the ceiling oppressively low. My sanctuary was now the heart of the cage.
The apartment was a breathing trap. I tried the front door, but the knob was cold and smooth, used to the frame. It wouldn't turn. The window in the living room was no longer glass, but a flat gray surface that was cold to the touch. The dripping from the bathroom was the only sound, a steady, maddening beat in the crushing silence. I pushed the bathroom door open, and my stomach plummeted. It didn't open into the small tiled room I knew. It opened back into the hallway I was standing in, creating a perfect, nauseating loop. I slammed it shut, my breath coming in ragged gasps. My home was no longer a place, it was a puzzle box, and I was the prize trapped inside. The walls began to shift. The simple, calming pattern of the wallpaper seemed to crawl, the lines twisting into impossible, non-Euclidean shapes that made my head spin. A door appeared where none had been before. Hope, desperate and foolish, flared in my chest. I wrenched it open and found myself staring into the decaying hall of the abandoned asylum I'd photographed a month ago. I slammed it shut. The image of peeling paint and rusted bed frames burned into my mind. The apartment was stitching itself together with the fabric of my memories, turning my life's work into a maze. I started to run. Every door I opened was a new failure, a new dead end, twisted from my own past. One opened into the cavernous, silent space of the skeletal factory. Another opened into a perfect replica of my childhood hallway with the door that only I could see. I was trapped in a labyrinth of my own making. The familiar turned into the monstrous. The loss of recognition was the purest form of terror. It was like losing my own mind, one room at a time. After what felt like an eternity of this frantic, hopeless flight, I threw open one last door and collapsed sobbing onto a familiar floor. I was in my bedroom. It was perfect. My bed was neatly made, my books were on the shelf, the moonlight was streaming through the window. For a heart-stopping moment, I thought it was over. Then I heard it. A low, grinding scrape, like stone on stone. It was coming from the walls. I scrambled to my feet and watched in horror as the wall opposite my bed began to inch forward. The ceiling groaned, a web of cracks spreading across its surface as it began a slow, inexorable descent. The room was shrinking. The furniture began to protest, my wooden desk groaning, a leg snapping with a sharp crack. My bookshelf tilted, sending books tumbling to the floor. The air grew thick, the pressure building with every passing second. Claustrophobia, raw and primal, seized me. This was a more intimate horror than the maze. This was a physical threat, a slow, inevitable death. I was being squeezed out of existence. I pounded on the walls, my knuckles bloodying against the shifting wallpaper, but it was like hitting solid rock. My screams were swallowed by the groaning of the dying room. I was a rat in a shrinking cage, and the horror was absolute. My carefully constructed reality, my logic, my camera, all of it was useless. I was going to be crushed by the four walls of my own sanctuary, a grim, poetic end that the architect had designed just for me. My life, my fears, and my death, all contained in a single shrinking room.
As the walls closed in, the pressure building in my ears, something inside me broke. The part of me that had built a fortress of logic, the girl who used a camera to cage the world in neat, understandable rectangles, shattered. All that was left was the child who saw impossible things, the one who was called a freak. My entire life, I had run from that part of myself. Now it was my only hope. The architect had built this prison from my logic, so logic couldn't be the key. I had to do something irrational, something insane. My eyes darted to the window. Outside wasn't the familiar street, but a swirling, starless void. It wasn't an escape, it was an execution. And it was the only choice I had left, to be crushed or to jump into nothing. I surrendered to the madness. With a final, desperate scream, I launched myself at the window. The glass didn't shatter, it dissolved around me like smoke. And then I was falling, but not falling. There was no rush of air, no plummeting sensation. I was floating, suspended in a cool, silent, liquid black space. It was the absolute opposite of the crushing pressure of the room. It was vast, empty, and strangely peaceful. The sensory deprivation was total. There was no up, no down, no sound, no light. There was only me and the slow, gentle drift into oblivion. My terror faded, replaced by an exhausted emptiness. My consciousness frayed at the edges, and I let go, passing out into the silent, black void. I woke with a gasp, the smell of sugar and roasting coffee beans filling my lungs. I was sitting on the pavement, my back against the cool brick wall of the Sweet Tooth. The small white box with its slice of red velvet cake was resting beside me. The night was quiet, but it was a normal quiet, filled with the distant hum of the living city. My heart hammered against my ribs. I scrambled to my feet and looked across the street. The sign for the daily grind was right side up. I looked down the block. My apartment building was exactly where it should be, a comfortable, boring distance away. It was over. I had escaped. But as I stood there under the warm, normal glow of the streetlights, a chilling certainty settled into my bones. I hadn't reclaimed my reality. I had only survived a nightmare. The memory of the walls closing in, the feeling of that liquid black space had carved something new into my soul. The walk was over for now, but I would never be home again. My camera hanging at my side felt like a child's toy, a useless trinket against the darkness I now knew existed. Because the architect was real, and I understood now that its labyrinth wasn't a place it put you in. It was a place that was always there, just beneath the surface of the world you thought you knew. And that, I realized, is the most terrifying thing of all.
Thank you so much for watching or listening. Like and subscribe for more nightmares. Your support keeps the darkness from consuming this channel, so we can face the next terrifying story together. Don't be left in the dark.